Hello, I'm Simon Whistler, you're watching TopTenz Net, and in the video today we're looking at the top 10 ordinary people who joined foreign terrorist groups. Number 10. The teenage Swedish girl who joined ISIS.
Many teenagers run away to fight for ISIS. Some counts put the number of foreign teenagers among their ranks at up to 2,000. But Marilyn Nevalainen from Boras near Gothenburg may be unique in that she had no idea who they were or what they did when she joined. She was only 15 when she left the comforts of Sweden for the grinding poverty and constant violence of Syria. Pregnant by her 19-year-old Muslim boyfriend, she claims she had never heard of ISIS or even Islam when she left the country. Her story is that her boyfriend became obsessed with jihadist websites after they'd gone out for a short while and then tricked her into taking a bus across Europe to the Turkey-Syrian border. Originally a member of the group, she eventually became a hostage until she was freed by Kurdish forces in 2016. With her jihadist boyfriend dead in an airstrike, it seems unlikely she'll be returning to Syria anytime soon.
Number 9. The Dutch student who became a FARC spokesperson.
Age 19, Dutch student Tanja Niemeyer made a simple decision that would drastically alter the course of her life. She traveled to Colombia to become an English teacher. Nothing unusual about that, except how she dealt with the grinding poverty visible in the capital Bogotá. She got angry, really angry. From a comfortable middle-class family, she couldn't see why any children had to live on the streets while other Colombians became wealthy. She decided to take action. With her professor's help, she tracked down and signed up with the notorious FARC. The oldest left-wing insurgency movement on Earth and one of the world's best-funded terror groups, FARC has spent over 50 years trying to bring down the Colombian government. Niemeyer apparently thought joining their ranks would help create an equal society where no Colombian child would have to suffer in poverty again. Instead, she wound up as the public European face for a gang of drug runners, killers, and child soldiers. That's not to say she regrets her rash decision. Over 12 years after joining the group, she is now its English-language spokesperson at the current peace talks. Although she still claims she would die for FARC, some suspect she is little more than a hostage herself.
Number 8. The middle-class Brit who joined Jabhat al-Nusra.
If you've never heard of the name Jabhat al-Nusra before, you should know they're basically al-Qaeda's branch in Syria. In 2015, they had an unlikely new convert join their ranks. Lucas Kinney was a rich, middle-class British kid who grew up attending Catholic schools in the home counties. You may be familiar with his father Patrick's work and not realize it. He was an assistant director on movies like Braveheart and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. As a teenager, Lucas wanted to be a priest. Now he was telling the world via YouTube videos that he wanted to kill his fellow countrymen in a jihadist suicide attack. Kinney's route to al-Nusra is still the subject of some speculation, but there are a few details that stand out. Despite spending his teenage years in Saudi Arabia and Egypt, his stepfather was an airline manager frequently posted abroad, he appears to have radicalized in Vienna. After meeting some hardliners on his Middle Eastern Studies college course, he converted to Islam. The next step is one we'll depressingly hear a lot in this article: he fell in love. Kinney apparently has a wife in Syria who convinced him to come over. Being a directionless dropout, Kinney agreed. From there, his passion for Islam morphed into a desire to become a radical and carve out an extremist kingdom in the carnage of Syria. It was the ultimate expression of bored, alienated youth, and one that has led him to do some terrible things.
Number 7. The Baltimore journalist turned Libyan rebel.
When Matthew Van Dyke first appeared alongside anti-Gaddafi rebels in Libya's Arab Spring, you could have been forgiven for thinking he was just doing his job. A journalist by trade, Van Dyke had previously made documentaries covering all sorts of conflicts. Only this time, Van Dyke wasn't there as an observer, he was there as a fighter. His route onto the battlefields of Libya is perhaps one of the strangest in this article. After going through a period of intense isolation in his 20s, Van Dyke decided to set off on what he called a crash course in manhood. In this case, manhood meant taking a glorified gap year to the world's trouble spots and getting up to no good. At one point in 2010, he befriended a group of Libyans. When the Arab Spring hit the country in 2011, Van Dyke decided to join his friends in fighting with the rebels. All of this was part of his manhood crash course. He was last heard from in 2015, raising a private army in Iraq to fight ISIS with.
Number 6. The punk rocker who became ISIS's social media guru.
If you'd met Sally Ann Jones at her Kent home in early 2013, you would almost certainly have been unimpressed. A former punk rocker in her mid-40s, Jones was living on benefits and obsessed with witchcraft and conspiracy theories. Her last job had been working as a perfume saleswoman for L'Oreal, something she'd been uniquely bad at. Then in May of 2013, this former punk feminist unexpectedly converted to Islam. By the end of the year, she was living in Syria and working as a social media guru for the then small militant organization ISIS. For all it sounds like the culmination of a dissolute life, Jones's decision to become a female jihadist likely comes down to a depressingly familiar urge. Just before she left England, Jones had started a sexual relationship with Junaid Hussein, a 19-year-old hacker who wanted to join ISIS. Apparently in love, Jones followed Hussein to Syria, sadly taking her 10-year-old child with her. Although Hussein was killed by an airstrike in 2015, Jones continues to tweet for ISIS, advocating the beheading of Christians with a blunt knife. The US, UK, EU, and UN currently list this lovelorn loser as a wanted terrorist.
Number 5. The Swedish neo-Nazi carving a white utopia in Ukraine.
With Syria and Iraq in meltdown, most of the world seems to have forgotten about the war in eastern Ukraine, yet the Donbass conflict is nearly as messy as that in the Middle East. Alongside official Ukrainian forces, paramilitary and neo-Nazi terrorist groups are battling violent insurgents and clandestine Russian soldiers. Some have even attracted foreign fighters such as Michael Skillet. A Swedish neo-Nazi, Skillet joined the Azov Special Force. Tolerated by the Ukrainian government but far from official, Azov is to Donbass what the paramilitary Ulster Volunteer Force was to Northern Ireland's Troubles. In other words, it is a vicious, semi-illegal group with an extremist ideology, an ideology Skillet found disturbingly close to his own. Skillet's goal in joining Azov was to create a pure white state within Europe. In 2014, he claimed he actually wanted to topple the government in Kiev and spark a continent-wide race war. Like his political opposite, Tanya Neymeyer in FARC, he joined more for ideological than personal reasons, apparently hoping to stop Ukraine from becoming as tolerant of Jews and homosexuals as Sweden is. In other words, his motivation was bred purely from hate.
Number 4. The White Widow of al-Shabaab.
Uniquely on this list, Samantha Laithwaite may be more famous to English speakers than the group she joined. Known as the White Widow, she was involved in the 2013 Westgate shopping mall attack in Kenya that left over 60 innocent people dead. How a shy girl from Aylesbury, England became one of the world's most wanted terrorists is a strange tale indeed. The Kenya attack came while Laithwaite was working for al-Shabaab, the Somali Islamist group that is currently trying to decide whether it works for al-Qaeda or ISIS. But her first encounter with Islamic Jihad came long before. In 2005, her then-husband was one of the 4 men who exploded himself on London's transport network, killing 52 innocent people and injuring 700. At the time, Laithwaite condemned her husband's actions. Yet she remained part of the Islamic extremist community. In 2008, she moved to South Africa and married another jihadist a hate preacher had introduced her to.
Number 3. The Self-Radicalized Australian teen.
Depending on how you look at it, the story of Jake Bellardi is either a sad one about mental illness or a dark warning about teenage impulsiveness. An Australian teen who grew up in an anti-Muslim family, Bellardi is unique that he wasn't radicalized by anyone nor drawn into extremism by love or personal experience. He radicalized himself by reading about politics on the internet. Under his own steam, Bellardi contacted first al-Nusra and then ISIS. He went to the group saying he wanted to die and asked if he could be made a suicide bomber. Unsurprisingly, the group agreed. In 2015, Bellardi detonated a car bomb in the middle of Ramadi, Iraq, with himself inside. He was 18. No other casualties were reported.
Number 2. South Africa's real-life Expendables.
We are sure you've heard of the Sylvester Stallone movie The Expendables and its bazillion or so sequels. What you might not be aware of is that it's secretly a documentary. There really are a bunch of guys approaching retirement who work as a fighting force across the globe, only instead of being former action stars, they're former racists. Old soldiers for South Africa's apartheid regime, these Expendables make their money helping out various governments, from the legitimate to the deadliest terrorist states. In 2015, a group of these South African mercenaries made headlines for helping Nigeria's government fight against Boko Haram. However, they've not always been on the right side of history. In the Arab Spring, they helped out Mad Dog Gaddafi at the time when the Libyan leader was openly running a terrorist state. Libyan intelligence is long thought to have been behind the Lockerbie plane bombing in the skies over Scotland. Interestingly, their motives are largely down to earth and kind of grimy. Many of these soldiers are now dirt poor and feel cast aside by the new multicultural South African state. They take dirty money fighting in wars around the world so they can put their kids through college or get their grandkids enrolled in a decent school.
Number 1. The German rapper who joined ISIS.
For a long time, Dennis Cuthbert publicly went by the name of Deso Dog, a German rapper. He was a fixture of the Berlin underground scene in the mid-2000s and had a personal life that was nearly as well known. A libertine, Deso Dog's free time seemed to revolve around taking a crap ton of drugs and sleeping with plenty of women. In other words, he was living the hip-hop dream, or at least a low-budget German version of it. When planning for his obituary, Berlin's low-circulation hip-hop magazines presumably thought Deso would be going down in a shootout or at the end of a needle. Not even close. In 2015, Cuthbert was killed by a US airstrike. The reason? He had left Berlin to become an ISIS propagandist in Syria. Cuthbert's conversion is unusual in that it can be traced back to one precise moment. In 2010, the rapper was in a near-fatal car crash and had a near-death experience. Immediately afterward, he converted to Islam and exchanged rap for a Muslim singing career. Not long after that, he began talking about waging jihad in Germany. German police immediately raided his apartment and found a ton of guns. Whacked with a €1,800 fine, Cuthbert instead skipped the country for an al-Qaeda affiliate operating in Egypt. From there, it was only a short journey to his eventual death as an ISIS propagandist working in Syria.
So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do give us a like below, and if you haven't subscribed already, click that subscribe button below me now. Or if you're on a mobile device, I know you can't click the links that are on the screen now, so there will be links in the description below, and thanks for watching.